She sat there every morning on the same cracked bench at the corner of Maple Street. Most people didn't even notice her anymore, but what they didn't know would change everything. Her name was Margaret. At least, that's what the faded name tag on her worn coat said. She'd been sitting on that bench for 3 weeks straight, wrapped in layers of clothing that had seen better days, her weathered hands clutching a small leather bag. The morning rush was always the same. Businessmen in press suits hurried past, eyes glued to their phones. Mothers with strollers crossed to the other side of the street. Teenagers laughed and pointed from a distance. To them, she was invisible. Or worse, she was something to avoid. On this particular Tuesday, the air was bitter cold. Margaret's breath came out in small clouds as she sat perfectly still, watching. Always watching. A young banker named David walked past her every single day. Designer shoes, expensive watch. He'd worked hard for everything he had, and he wasn't about to let anyone make him feel guilty about it. When his eyes accidentally met Margaret's that morning, he looked away quickly and picked up his pace. Just another homeless person, he thought. There are shelters for that. What David didn't see was the way Margaret's eyes followed him. Not with anger, not with desperation, with something else entirely, something patient, something knowing. Around noon, a group of college students sat on the steps nearby, eating lunch. One of them, a girl with bright pink hair, noticed Margaret and whispered to her friends. They all turned to look. "Should we, give her something?" the pink-haired girl asked. Her friend Sarah shrugged. "There's literally a sign for a soup kitchen 2 blocks away. If she really needed help, she'd go there." They went back to their phones. Margaret heard every word. She always did. But she didn't move, didn't react. She simply reached into her leather bag and pulled out a small notebook, writing something down with a pen that looked far too expensive for someone in her situation. By late afternoon, the owner of the coffee shop across the street had had enough. He marched over to Margaret with his arms crossed. "Look, lady," he said, not unkindly but firmly. "You've been here for weeks. You're bad for business. People don't want to see this when they're getting their morning coffee. I'm sorry, but you need to move along." Margaret looked up at him. Her eyes were clear, sharp. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply asked one question. "Do you know who I am?" The coffee shop owner blinked, caught off guard. "No, should I?" Margaret smiled, a small, sad smile that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 untold stories. "No," she said softly. "I suppose you shouldn't." She stood up slowly, her joints stiff from the cold and the hours of sitting. She gathered her things with a quiet dignity that seemed out of place with her appearance. And then she did something unexpected. She walked directly to the bank across the street. David's bank. The security guard at the door stepped forward, ready to redirect her. But Margaret didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the reception desk and placed a business card on the counter. The receptionist looked at the card, then at Margaret, then back at the card. Her face went pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mrs. Chen, nobody told us you were—" "It's quite all right," Margaret interrupted gently. "I didn't want anyone to know." Within minutes, the bank's regional director was rushing down the stairs, straightening his tie, his face flushed with panic. David, working at his desk nearby, looked up in confusion at the commotion. "Mrs. Chen, please, if you'll come with me to my office," the director was saying, his voice shaking slightly. "That won't be necessary," Margaret said. Her voice was soft, but it carried an unmistakable authority. "I've seen what I came to see." She turned to David, who was now standing at his desk, frozen. "You," she said. "You walk past me every day." David's mouth went dry. I'm sorry, I didn't know." "You didn't know who I was," Margaret finished for him. "And that's exactly the point, isn't it?" The entire floor had gone silent. Margaret reached into her leather bag and pulled out the notebook she'd been writing in. She flipped it open. "3 weeks ago, my husband passed away. He was the founder of this bank. He built it from nothing, and he left me everything. Before I decided what to do with his legacy, I wanted to understand something." She looked around the room, at all the employees who were now staring. I wanted to know what kind of people worked here, what kind of people passed by someone in need every single day, what kind of world my husband had left behind. The director was sweating now. Mrs. Chen, please, if there's anything. This notebook, Margaret continued, her voice steady, contains the names of every person who showed me kindness in the past 3 weeks. It's a very short list. She turned to the pink-haired college girl, who had just walked in to use the ATM and was now standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with recognition. You, Margaret said. You considered helping. That's something. Then she looked at the coffee shop owner, who had followed her inside, his face drained of color. You asked me to leave. You said I was bad for business. Margaret's expression was unreadable. You were honest. That's more than most gave me. She closed the notebook and placed it back in her bag. I've made my decision about the bank, about all of it. She looked at the director. The details will come from my lawyers, but I want everyone here to remember something. The room held its breath. Every person you pass on the street is someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone who once had dreams, maybe still does. The woman you ignore could be the person who decides your future. She paused. Or she might just be someone who needed to be seen. Both matter equally. Margaret walked toward the exit, then stopped. Oh, and David? She turned back to the banker, whose face had gone pale. You're right, there are shelters. But this was never about needing shelter. This was about needing to know if my husband built his bank on the backs of people who understood compassion, or just profit. She left the building in silence. The next morning, the announcement went out. Margaret Chen had restructured her late husband's entire banking empire. 10% of all profits would now go to homelessness initiatives. Every employee would be required to complete quarterly community service. And the bank's new mission statement would prioritize seeing people, not numbers. David still walks past that bench every morning, but now it has a plaque on it. It reads, "In memory of James Chen, who believed everyone deserved to be seen, and in honor of Margaret Chen, who made sure we remembered." The bench is never empty anymore, not because someone's sleeping there, but because people stop. They sit, they look around, they see each other, and sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.